Welcome everyone to our live stream on TikTok. Before we embark on this exciting journey from Bolzano to Sion with Air France, please take a moment to listen to our safety briefing. Even though we're here to entertain and educate, safety comes first. Your seatbelt is your first line of defense against unexpected turbulence. Fasten it low and tight across your lap, ensuring it's snug but comfortable. Keep it fastened throughout the flight, as even heroes need to stay anchored. In the unlikely event of an emergency exits are your escape routes. Count the number of rows to the nearest exit, both ahead and behind you. This knowledge could be your lifeline if visibility is compromised. Should the cabin pressure drop, oxygen masks will drop from above. Secure your own mask first, because even heroes need to breathe before they can save others. Pull the mask towards you, secure it over your nose and mouth, and breathe normally. Adventure doesn't wait for anyone. Over water, your life vest is your personal flotation device. It's under your seat or in a seat pocket. When instructed, slip it over your head, secure the straps, and if the need arises, inflate it by pulling the tabs. Remember, heroes don't sink, they rise to the challenge. In the unlikely event of an unscheduled stop, brace yourself. Lean forward, head down, hands over the seat in front, or between your legs if there's no seat ahead. This is your shield against impact, the position of readiness and resilience. Here on TikTok, we know you love your devices. However, for this flight, please ensure they are in airplane mode. If you're filming or streaming, feel free to keep your cameras rolling. But remember to respect the privacy of others and follow our instructions for any safety announcements. This flight is a sanctuary of clean air. Smoking, including electronic cigarettes, is strictly forbidden. We're all here to breathe easy, to enjoy the adventure without the smokescreen. As we prepare for takeoff, let's embrace this adventure with confidence, knowing we're prepared for any twist or turn. Your seatbelts are your lifeline, your knowledge of exits is your map, and your adherence to safety instructions is your script for survival. Thank you for joining us on this live stream. Fasten your seatbelts, keep your devices in airplane mode but ready for streaming, and let's set the stage for an unforgettable journey on flight MZK 2006, under the command of Captain Shadow.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our chilling journey through the skies. We are on the brink of departure from Bolzano to Sion aboard the Boeing 737-500 under the command of Captain Shadow with Air France as our carrier. This flight, MZK 2006, will not only take us through the clouds, but also through the darkest corners of aviation history. Today, the sky above us is a deceptive calm. A clear blue canvas, without a single cloud to obscure our view, promises a serene flight. But do not be fooled by the tranquility. The skies can be as treacherous as the ocean depths, as you will soon discover. It's time for a pushback. Imagine the tranquility of a serene day in Indonesia on the 9th day of January 2021. Srivijaya Air Flight SJ182 takes off from Jakarta only to vanish into the abyss of the Java Sea. Moments later, 62 souls, their dreams and hopes were extinguished in an instant. We will delve into the heart-wrenching story of this disaster, peeling back the layers of mystery and despair. Exploring the reasons behind the sudden plunge, the investigation, and the echoes of loss that still reverberate. Our next tale transports us to Russia on the 14th day of September 2008. Aeroflot Flight 821 was approaching Perm when the skies turned dark. 88 lives were extinguished in an instant. This story is not just about the crash, but the haunting questions that linger the findings of the inquiry. and the shadows it cast on the future of air travel. Our final descent takes us to August 6th, 2005, over the Mediterranean Sea. Tunenter, Flight 1153, faced a dire predicament, leading to an emergency water landing. 16 out of 39 aboard were claimed by the sea. We'll recount the harrowing moments leading up to the splashdown, the bravery of those aboard, and the echoes of change that followed. As we prepare for our own flight, let the gravity of these stories. Attention TikTok adventurers. We're about to embark on our flight. The engines of our Boeing 737-500 are coming to life. We're moments away from takeoff. While we're in the process of starting the engines, this is your golden window to grab a snack or a drink. Feel free to move about the cabin, but remember, this is your last chance before we soar through the skies. So if you're craving that in-flight meal or need to stretch your legs, now's the time to do it. Thank you for joining us on this live stream. Fasten your seatbelts, grab your snack, and let's get ready for an unforgettable journey on Flight MZK 20006 under the command of Captain Shadow. Remind us of the thin line between the mundane and the catastrophic. Ensure your seatbelts are fastened, your seats are upright, and your devices are in airplane mode. We are mere moments away from our departure into the unknown. Thank you for joining us on this somber yet enlightening journey. We hope to provide you with both entertainment and education as we recount these tragic chapters of aviation history. Stay tuned and let's make this flight a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Hey, TikTok family! I'm talking to you during taxiing to the runway at Bolzano Airport, where we'll soon take off on Air France. Flight MZK 20006 to Sion. Thank you for being with us in this special moment. Your comments and engagement make this stream truly exceptional. While our pilots prepare for takeoff, I want to share something important with you. Creating such transmissions is a big challenge. From planning the route, through setting up equipment, to ensuring the highest quality broadcast. If you enjoy our stream, you can support us in several ways. Likes and comments. Every reaction helps us reach more viewers. Your activity fuels this stream. Click follow to not miss future takeoffs and landings. Share the stream with friends. Let more people join our aviation adventure. TikTok allows sending virtual gifts. Each gift is a signal for us that it's worth continuing. Check our aviation merchandise store in bio. Every purchase supports future broadcasts. For those interested, we also have exclusive materials and behind-the-scenes content on Patreon. Do you hear that? We're increasing power before takeoff. Your presence and support allow us to keep growing and create better content for you. Fasten your seatbelts, stay with us, and get ready for takeoff. Every form of support matters. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready for takeoff. Please fasten your seatbelts and prepare for the fascinating stories I'll be sharing with you during the flight. This is your captain speaking again. Today I'd like to share something fascinating about our aircraft. The Boeing 737-500 is often called the perfect middle ground aircraft in aviation history. When Boeing designed this plane in the late 1980s, they wanted to create something really special, a compact jet that could do it all. Let me tell you why this aircraft is so remarkable. First, imagine a vehicle that can carry 132 passengers, travel at nearly 500 miles per hour, and yet handle like a much smaller plane. Our 737-500 model is particularly interesting because it's part of what we call the classic family. It's like the younger sibling in the 737 family, but don't let its size fool you. One thing I particularly love about this aircraft is its versatility. We can land it on shorter runways in challenging weather conditions and at high-altitude airports. The cockpit is a pilot's dream. Everything is exactly where it needs to be. It's like a perfectly organized workspace, where every switch and display has been carefully positioned for maximum efficiency. Safety-wise, this aircraft is truly remarkable. Throughout its service history, the 737-500 has maintained one of the best safety records in commercial aviation. Did you know that each engine on this aircraft can produce enough thrust to power 19,000 average homes? Yet they're so reliable that engine failures are extremely rare. The wings are engineering masterpieces. They're designed to flex up to 23 feet upward, which might sound scary, but it's actually a fantastic safety feature. Our hydraulic systems are triple redundant. That means if one system fails, we have two backups. If those fail, we still have mechanical backup systems. The fuselage is built like a tank. It's designed to withstand pressures far beyond what we experience in normal flight. Every 3 minutes, the entire air in this cabin is replaced with fresh air. That's better than most hospitals. We have weather radar that can detect storms up to 180 miles away. We can spot turbulence before we hit it and adjust our route accordingly. The landing gear on this aircraft can absorb the impact of a landing at maximum weight, which is about 115,000 pounds. That's like catching a falling house gently. Our navigation systems are so precise, we can tell our position within 3 feet. Anywhere on Earth, we have multiple backup systems for everything critical. The autopilot system can process over 100 inputs per second, ensuring smooth and safe flight, even in challenging conditions. Each window on this aircraft can withstand pressures that would crush a car yet. They're designed to provide optimal visibility for us pilots. The weather at our destination looks excellent, and we're expecting a smooth landing. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your flight. Every single component on this aircraft has been tested far beyond normal operating conditions. Nothing is left to chance. The computers on board are constantly monitoring thousands of parameters. If anything isn't perfect, we know about it instantly. I've been flying various aircraft for over 2 decades, and I can tell you the 737-500 is one of the most reliable planes ever built. It might not be the newest or the biggest, but it's like a trusted friend that never lets you down. The weather at our destination looks excellent, and we're expecting a smooth landing. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your flight. I'll tell you a story. Are you ready? You'd better not unfasten your seatbelts. Let's move on. On January 9th, 2021, the Soekarno-Hatta International Airport in Jakarta was bustling with activity, teeming with passengers and staff. Despite the heavy rain showers that were typical of the monsoon season in Indonesia, the airport located on the island of Java serves as the primary hub for international and domestic flights in the country, connecting millions of travelers to various destinations annually. The day began, much like any other, but the weather added a layer of complexity. Dark clouds hung low in the sky, and the humidity was palpable, creating a dense atmosphere that reduced visibility to about 3 kilometers due to the relentless rain. The temperature hovered around 27 degrees Celsius, which was normal for that time of year. But the combination of heat and moisture made the environment feel even more oppressive. Passengers moved through the terminals, checking in their luggage and awaiting their boarding calls, while airport staff managed operations efficiently, ensuring that flights were on schedule. Among the travelers were 56 individuals scheduled to board Sriwijaya Air Flight SJ-182, a domestic journey to Pontianak, a city in West Kalimantan, on the island of Borneo. The passengers included families, business travelers, and crew members who were preparing for the short trip across the Java Sea, unaware of the tragic fate that awaited them. The aircraft assigned for the flight was a Boeing 737-500 registered as PKCLC, which had been in service for over 2 decades. This particular plane had accumulated thousands of flight hours without major incidents, demonstrating a solid operational history. The aircraft had undergone a routine maintenance check just 2 days prior, and no significant issues were reported during the inspection, suggesting that it was fit for flight. Captain Afwan, the pilot in command, was a veteran aviator with over 15,000 flight hours to his name, showcasing his extensive experience and expertise in handling aircraft. His co-pilot, First Officer Diego Mamahit, was also highly experienced, having logged numerous flights on similar routes, contributing to a reputable flight crew renowned for their professionalism and strict adherence to safety protocols. Ground crews performed standard procedures as they prepared the plane for departure, including fueling, baggage loading, and comprehensive pre-flight checks, all of which proceeded without anomalies. Air traffic controllers managed takeoffs and landings efficiently, coordinating the flow of aircraft seamlessly, despite the challenging weather conditions that could potentially disrupt operations. The first subtle signs of trouble appeared during the pre-departure phase, when some ground technicians noted minor irregularities in the auto-throttle system, a device that automatically adjusts engine thrust to maintain a set speed, crucial for safe and efficient flight operations. These irregularities were not outside acceptable parameters, and similar minor glitches had been observed before, without consequence, so they did not raise immediate alarms. At approximately 2:40 in the afternoon, Western Indonesia time, the flight received clearance for a takeoff. As the plane accelerated down the runway, everything seemed normal. The engines roared to life, and the aircraft lifted smoothly into the gray, overcast sky, beginning its ascent toward the designated cruising altitude. Moments into the ascent, the cockpit instruments began displaying unusual readings. The altitude indicators showed slight fluctuations, and the vertical speed indicators, which measured the rate of climb, deviated from expected values. These variations were minimal, but noteworthy, suggesting that the aircraft was not ascending as smoothly as it should have been under normal circumstances. Air traffic control maintained communication with the pilots, providing standard instructions and receiving clear acknowledgments in return. Neither Captain Afwan nor First Officer Mamahit reported any issues with the aircraft's performance, and their voices remained calm and professional, giving no indication of concern or distress. Weather radar systems detected increasing precipitation along the flight path, with heavy rain cells forming that could lead to potential turbulence. Controllers issued weather advisories to all flights in the area, alerting pilots to the changing conditions. Other pilots reported moderate wind gusts and shifting cloud patterns, which were typical for the region during the monsoon season. As the plane reached an altitude of about 8,000 feet, it briefly leveled off unexpectedly. Normally, the aircraft would continue ascending steadily to its cruising altitude without interruption, so this leveling off was inconsistent with standard climb procedures, and indicated that the flight was not following the expected profile. The auto-throttle system began displaying further inconsistencies. Engine thrust levels did not match the settings programmed into the flight management computer. Specifically, the left engine appeared to produce less power than the right, creating an imbalance that could lead to control challenges and require corrective action from the pilots to maintain stable flight. By the time the aircraft approached 10,000 feet, the situation had worsened significantly. The plane began banking to the left at an increasing angle, a maneuver that exceeded normal operational limits and required immediate correction to prevent loss of control. The uneven thrust from the engines exacerbated the issue, making it more difficult for the pilots to stabilize the aircraft. Air traffic controllers noticed the deviation from the assigned flight path on their radar screens. They attempted to contact Flight SJ-182 to verify the situation and offer assistance if needed. This time, there was no response from the cockpit. The sudden radio silence heightened concerns among the controllers, signaling a potential emergency. Inside the cockpit, warning alarms likely sounded as the flight control systems detected the abnormal bank angle and engine discrepancies. The asymmetric thrust resulting from the malfunctioning autothrottle could have caused significant control issues, challenging the pilot's ability to manage the aircraft effectively under the rapidly deteriorating conditions. The plane's descent rate increased sharply, with instruments showing a rapid loss of altitude as it began to lose lift. The aircraft was descending at a rate of thousands of feet per minute, far beyond typical descent profiles, indicating a critical problem that required immediate action to prevent disaster. Other aircraft in the vicinity were alerted to the developing emergency. Controllers instructed nearby flights to alter their courses to ensure safe distances were maintained, initiating emergency protocols to manage the airspace effectively and prevent additional incidents. Teams on the ground convened emergency meetings to assess the unfolding situation. Experts consulted on possible causes and immediate actions that could be taken to assist the troubled flight. However, the lack of communication from the pilots limited their ability to intervene directly. Passengers on the plane might have sensed that something was wrong. Sudden shifts in the aircraft's movement, unusual sounds, and possible announcements from the flight attendants could have caused alarm. The rapid escalation of the situation left little time for the crew to manage passenger reactions or provide detailed explanations. At approximately 2:45 in the afternoon, the disaster reached its devastating peak. The aircraft entered a steep dive, heading uncontrollably toward the Java Sea below. The speed increased as the plane descended, with the nose pointing downward in a trajectory that was impossible to recover from at that altitude and rate of descent. Witnesses on nearby boats reported seeing the plane nosedive into the water, describing a terrifying sight as the aircraft plummeted from the sky. They heard a loud noise, followed by a massive splash and a shockwave that rocked their vessels. The impact was catastrophic, leaving little chance for anyone on board to survive. Emergency response teams were dispatched immediately. The Indonesian Search and Rescue Agency mobilized resources, including naval ships, helicopters, and specialized personnel trained for maritime emergencies. They aimed to reach the crash site as quickly as possible to search for survivors and begin recovery efforts. Rescue crews arrived to find debris scattered across a wide area of the sea. Floating wreckage included pieces of the fuselage, passenger belongings, seat cushions, and other fragments of the aircraft. Oil slicks on the water's surface indicated fuel spillage, adding environmental concerns to the tragedy. Divers were deployed to search for the main wreckage underwater. The depth in that area of the Java Sea is about 30 meters, presenting challenges due to limited visibility and strong currents. The conditions made the operation hazardous for the divers, who persisted in their efforts despite the risks. Despite the rapid response from emergency teams, no survivors were found. All 56 passengers and 6 crew members had perished in the crash. The suddenness and scale of the disaster left families, friends, and the entire nation in shock and mourning. Intensive efforts were made to recover the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, commonly known as black boxes. These devices are crucial for understanding what happened during the final moments of the flight, capturing instrument readings and conversations that can provide invaluable insights to investigators. In the weeks that followed, the disaster authorities focused on piecing together the sequence of events that led to the crash. The black boxes were eventually recovered from the seabed, a significant achievement given the challenging conditions. They were sent to laboratories for analysis by experts who specialized in aviation accidents. Preliminary findings pointed to a malfunctioning autothrottle system as a key factor in the crash. The left engine's reduced thrust, combined with pilot inputs attempting to correct the imbalance, may have led to an aerodynamic stall. An aerodynamic stall occurs when the wings no longer produce enough lift due to the angle of attack, causing the aircraft to lose altitude rapidly. Investigations also revealed that the autothrottle had a history of issues on this particular aircraft. Maintenance records showed previous complaints and reports of irregularities, but corrective actions were not thoroughly implemented or validated. This raised serious questions about maintenance protocols, oversight, and regulatory compliance within the airline and the broader aviation industry in Indonesia. The Indonesian National Transportation Safety Committee released official reports detailing their findings. They highlighted the need for stricter adherence to maintenance procedures and more rigorous inspections. Recommendations were made to improve training for handling technical anomalies and to enhance communication between pilots and air traffic control during emergencies. Families of the victims sought answers, justice, and closure. Memorial services were held across the country, honoring the lives lost and providing a space for collective grief. The tragedy brought national and international attention to aviation safety standards in Indonesia, prompting calls for reform and increased accountability. Sriwijaya Air faced intense scrutiny from regulators, the media, and the public. The airline cooperated with authorities, expressing a commitment to enhancing safety measures and restoring confidence. Fleet-wide inspections were conducted to prevent similar incidents, and additional training programs were implemented for staff and crew members. Economically, the disaster impacted the aviation industry significantly. Passenger confidence declined, leading to reduced bookings and financial losses for airlines operating in the region. Insurance claims and legal actions added financial burdens to Sriwijaya Air, affecting its operations and future prospects. Environmental concerns were also addressed by authorities and environmental organizations. The crash resulted in fuel and debris contaminating the sea, posing risks to marine life and ecosystems. Efforts were made to minimize ecological damage through cleanup operations and monitoring of the affected area to ensure recovery and prevent long-term harm. Today, the legacy of Sriwijaya Air Flight SJ-182 serves as a poignant reminder of the critical importance of aviation safety and the profound consequences when systems fail. The incident prompted significant changes in industry practices within Indonesia and influenced policies internationally, emphasizing the need for continuous oversight and improvement. Enhanced maintenance procedures have been adopted by airlines across the country. Airlines now ensure that all technical issues are addressed promptly and thoroughly, with strict validation processes in place. Regular audits by aviation authorities enforce compliance with international standards, holding airlines accountable for safety. Pilot training programs have incorporated scenarios involving equipment malfunctions and emergency situations. There is an increased emphasis on manual flying skills, situational awareness, and effective emergency response. This comprehensive training prepares flight crews to handle unexpected situations with confidence and competence. Memorials honor the lives lost in the tragedy with annual remembrances, bringing together families, officials, and community members. These events provide solace to those affected and reinforce the collective commitment to preventing such disasters in the future. The incident has led to increased collaboration between airlines manufacturers, regulators, and international aviation bodies. Sharing information about technical issues and best practices helps prevent future accidents. Transparency and open communication are now prioritized to enhance safety across the global aviation community. Reflecting on the disaster, there is a recognition of the ongoing need for vigilance and dedication to safety in air travel. Continuous improvement in technology, training, maintenance, and regulatory oversight is essential to protect lives. The lessons learned from Flight SJ-182 contributes significantly to making air travel safer for everyone, ensuring that such a tragedy is not repeated. Wow, that was truly a heartbreaking story from the 9th of January, 2021, when the Sriwijaya air flight crashed into the Java Sea just after taking off from Jakarta, claiming the lives of 62 people. Before we move on to another equally tragic tale, I'd like to ask for your support. Every follow, fire emoji, or gift helps me share even more important stories like these with you. So, let's go. On the 14th of September, 2008, a tragedy unfolded. It was early in the morning in Perm, Russia. The city, located near the Ural Mountains, was beginning its usual Sunday routines. The streets were quiet as residents prepared for the day ahead. The weather was cool, with light clouds covering the sky. Perm is a significant industrial and cultural hub in Russia. It sits along the banks of the Kama River, a vital waterway for transport and commerce. The city's economy thrives on manufacturing, oil refining, and forestry. People were engaged in normal activities, unaware of the impending disaster. Aeroflot Nord Flight 821 was en route to Perm from Moscow. The aircraft was a Boeing 737, a common sight in Russian skies. On board were 82 passengers and 6 crew members. Captain Rashid Kilovitov was in command of the flight. He had accumulated over 3,000 hours of flight experience. First Officer Rustem Gabulin assisted him in the cockpit. The Perm International Airport was preparing for the plane's arrival. Air traffic controllers monitored incoming flights diligently. The ground staff ensured that all systems were functioning properly. Families awaited the arrival of their loved ones at the terminal. Everything appeared normal as the flight approached its destination. As Flight 821 neared, Perm minor issues began to emerge. The aircraft deviated slightly from its designated flight path. Air traffic controllers noticed the deviation on their radar screens. They contacted the pilots to address the anomaly. The responses from the cockpit were delayed and somewhat unclear. The pilots reported difficulties with the navigation systems. Instruments displayed inconsistent readings, causing concern. Captain Kilovatov attempted to recalibrate the system's first officer. Gabdullin expressed his unease about the situation. They struggled to interpret the conflicting data from there. Equipment passengers remained largely unaware of the technical problems. Some noticed slight turbulence but thought little of it. Flight attendants continued their duties. Oblivious to the cockpit issues, the cabin maintained a calm atmosphere despite the unfolding events. Expert warnings were issued from the control tower. An experienced controller advised the pilots to correct their course. He noticed that the plane was descending faster than normal. The pilots acknowledged the advice, but seemed hesitant. They made adjustments. But the problems persisted. Employee observations on the ground indicated something was amiss. Technicians checked for any external factors affecting the flight. Weather conditions deteriorated slightly with increasing cloud cover. Visibility was still acceptable, but caution was advised. System malfunctions became more apparent as time passed. The autopilot functioned erratically, forcing manual control. The pilots communicated their struggles to air traffic control. Efforts were made to assist them from the ground. Tension began to build both in the air and on the ground. The situation escalated rapidly as the plane approached the airport. Communication between the cockpit and control tower became strained. Instructions from air traffic control were not followed precisely. The pilots appeared disoriented, unable to stabilize the aircraft. Failed prevention attempts added to the growing concern. The pilots tried to reset the navigation systems without success. They discussed performing a go-around maneuver to buy time. Fuel levels were adequate, but not unlimited. Every moment counted as they struggled to regain control. Emergency meetings were convened in the control tower. Experts analyzed the flight data in real time. They debated the best course of action to prevent a disaster. Suggestions were made to divert the plane to another airport. Communication with the pilots was vital but increasingly difficult. First Officer Gabdullin proposed taking manual control entirely. Captain Kilovatov agreed, and they disengaged the faulty systems. However, manual control proved challenging under the circumstances. The aircraft did not respond as expected to their inputs. Initial evacuation plans were prepared on the ground. Emergency services were alerted in position near the runway. Firefighters, paramedics, and police units stood by. The rise in tension was palpable among all personnel involved. Everyone hoped for a safe landing despite the odds. Passengers began to sense that something was wrong. The aircraft experienced unusual movements and sounds. Flight attendants noticed the anxiety and tried to reassure them. Standard safety protocols were reviewed quietly among the crew. The atmosphere inside the cabin grew increasingly uneasy. At precisely 5:10 in the morning, the disaster struck. The plane entered an unexpected nosedive during its final approach. Alarms blared inside the cockpit, signaling critical failures. The pilots fought desperately to pull the aircraft up. Their efforts were in vain as the controls ceased to respond. The Boeing 737 crashed into a residential area near Perm. The immediate impact caused a massive explosion. Flames engulfed the wreckage, lighting up the pre-dawn sky. Houses nearby were damaged by the force of the blast. Residents were jolted awake by the sound and tremors. Human reactions ranged from shock to panic. Witnesses described the scene as horrifying and surreal. Emergency response teams rushed to the location without delay. Firefighters battled the inferno, consuming the aircraft remains. Paramedics searched for survivors amid the debris rescue efforts, were hampered by the intense heat and flames. The crash site was chaotic with wreckage strewn across a wide area. The smell of smoke and burning fuel filled the air, despite the valiant efforts of first responders. No survivors were found. All 88 individuals on board had perished. Immediate casualties included passengers, crew, and a few ground victims. The community grappled with the sudden loss of life. Families awaited news with growing dread and sorrow. The realization of the tragedy began to sink in across Perm. The extent of the damage was extensive and devastating. Several homes were destroyed, or severely damaged infrastructure in the area suffered significant harm. Power lines were downed, and roads were blocked by debris. The environmental impact included fuel spills contaminating the soil. Casualty numbers were officially confirmed as 88 fatalities. This included 82 passengers and 6 crew members. Additionally, 2 individuals on the ground lost their lives. The total loss of life sent shockwaves through the nation. Economic consequences emerged for both the airline and the city. Aeroflot Nord faced legal actions and financial losses. The aviation industry in Russia came under intense scrutiny. Flight bookings decreased as public confidence wanted. The local economy in Perm felt the effects of the disaster. Community response was strong and compassionate. Vigils and memorials were organized to honor the victim. Support networks formed to aid grieving families. Donations and aid flowed in from across the country. The tragedy brought the community closer together. Official statements were released by government authorities. Investigations were promised to determine the cause. The Interstate Aviation Committee took charge of the inquiry. Preliminary reports pointed to pilot disorientation and system failures. Recommendations were anticipated to prevent future incidents. In the years following the tragedy, aviation safety underwent significant reforms. Authorities tightened regulations to address the identified shortcomings. Pilots received enhanced training programs focusing on proficiency and decision-making. Airlines implemented the lessons learned from Flight 821 across the industry. Greater emphasis was placed on realistic simulator training to prepare crews for emergency situations. A permanent monument now stands near the crash site to honor those lost. Annual ceremonies bring together families, friends, and community members. They gather to remember the victims and reflect on the impact of the disaster. Scholarships were established in the names of some victims to support aspiring pilots. Community initiatives also emerged to promote air travel safety awareness. Future prevention measures target both technological advancements and human factors. This tragedy underscored the critical importance of vigilance in aviation. The loss of Flight 821 served as a solemn reminder of the consequences of complacency. Continuous efforts are needed to prevent such catastrophes from reoccurring. The legacy of those who perished contributes to the safer skies we enjoy today. Their memory lives on through the advancements and reforms made since then. All right, fam, that's a wrap on the story of Aeroflot. Flight 821. Such a heavy and emotional tale, right? If you're feeling the vibes and want to hear more, don't forget to tap that like button, show some love, and smash those hearts. Your support keeps this live popping and helps me bring you more stories. Before we jump into the next wild aviation story, make sure you're following me. Hit that follow button if you haven't already, so you won't miss out. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Also, share this live with your friends and fam, so they can join the convo. Big shout out to everyone dropping gifts emojis and sharing their thoughts in the comments. Y'all are the real MVPs. Keep the chat lit. I love interacting with you guys. Let's get this live trending and reach even more people. Now, buckle up for another intense tale from the skies. We're about to dive into a story involving an emergency landing on the Mediterranean Sea. It's a wild ride with unexpected twists and turns, and it's sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned. It's gonna be a roller coaster you won't forget. On the 6th of August, 2005, beneath the radiant Mediterranean sun, Bari, a bustling port city in southern Italy, awoke to a day that promised warmth and clear skies. Locals and tourists alike engaged in their usual summer activities, such as strolling along the waterfront, enjoying espressos at outdoor, and preparing for voyages across the Azure Sea. The weather was idyllic, featuring gentle breezes and virtually cloudless skies, creating perfect conditions for air travel and encouraging a sense of ease and optimism. Among those heading to the airport, Bari International Airport was alive with the hustle and bustle of travelers. Airport staff and flight crews, all moving with purpose, as announcements echoed through the terminals and the aromas of fresh pastries wafted from nearby. Among the scheduled flights was Tuninter Flight 1153, set to depart for Gerba, a picturesque island known for its stunning beaches, whitewashed buildings, and rich cultural tapestry that blended Arab Berber and Mediterranean influences. The aircraft assigned to this route was an ATR-72, a twin-engine, turboprop plane renowned for its reliability on short-haul regional flights. It was under the command of Captain Chafik Al-Garbi, an experienced pilot boasting over 7,000 flight hours, who was assisted by First Officer Ali Kabair. Both of them meticulously conducted pre-flight checks and coordinated with air traffic control to ensure all systems were functioning optimally. As the 34 passengers boarded the plane, a mixture of families, eager for vacation, business travelers heading to meetings, and tourists seeking new adventures. The cabin crew welcomed them warmly, assisted with stowing luggage, and provided safety demonstrations with practiced professionalism. The atmosphere inside the aircraft was relaxed and filled with anticipation, as many looked forward to the one-hour journey across the Mediterranean that would transport them to the sun-soaked shores of Jerba. At 11:30 in the morning, after receiving clearance from the control tower, the plane taxied smoothly to the runway, its engines humming confidently, and took to the sky, ascending gracefully and leaving the Italian coastline behind as it set course over the vast expanse of the tranquil sea below, approximately 20 minutes into the flight. As the aircraft cruised at an altitude of 18,000 feet, the pilots began to notice irregularities on the instrument panel. Specifically, the right engine's fuel gauge was indicating a rapid decrease in fuel levels, which was inconsistent with the expected consumption for that stage of the flight. Captain Al-Garbi and First Officer Kabair conferred about the anomaly, considering the possibility of a fuel leak or a malfunctioning gauge, and decided to monitor the situation closely while cross-checking other instruments to identify any corroborating signs of trouble. The passengers remained blissfully unaware of any issues as the flight continued smoothly, without turbulence, and the cabin crew proceeded with their service, offering refreshments and ensuring everyone was comfortable. As minutes passed, the left engine's fuel gauge also began displaying erratic readings, suggesting that fuel levels were diminishing at an alarming rate on both sides. This heightened the pilots' concerns and prompted them to consult the aircraft's manual for troubleshooting procedures related to fuel system malfunctions. Despite their efforts to diagnose the problem, the situation worsened when they observed that the engine's power output was starting to fluctuate, causing subtle but perceptible changes in the aircraft's performance and altitude maintenance. Recognizing the potential severity of the issue, Captain Al Garby contacted air traffic control to report the irregularities and to request information on the nearest suitable airport for an emergency landing, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. Expert warnings or advisories from ground control were limited, as the nature of the malfunction was not immediately clear. The controllers suggested diverting to Palermo Airport in Sicily, which was the closest facility equipped to handle such emergencies. The pilots agreed with this recommendation and altered their course accordingly, all the while attempting to stabilize the engines and maintain sufficient altitude. System malfunctions became more pronounced as the fuel gauges continued to display inconsistent readings and attempts to transfer fuel between tanks, or to reset the indicators proved futile, leaving the pilots with growing concern over the reliability of their instruments and the true status of their fuel reserves. The gravity of the situation escalated significantly when both engines began losing power more rapidly, despite the pilots' best efforts to manage throttle settings and engine parameters, leading to a gradual but inexorable loss of altitude that could not be arrested through normal flight controls. Realizing that the aircraft might not have sufficient power to reach Palermo Airport, which was still some distance away, the pilots faced the daunting prospect of executing a forced landing, potentially on the open sea, which would require precise handling and posed considerable risks to all on board. Captain Al Garby declared a state of emergency to air traffic control, conveying the critical nature of their predicament and the diminishing options available as the plane continued its unpowered descent. Failed prevention attempts included multiple engine restart procedures, cross-feeding fuel between tanks, and reviewing emergency protocols outlined in the aircraft's manual. But none of these measures succeeded in restoring engine function or halting the decline in altitude. Communication with air traffic control provided limited assistance, as there were no nearby airports within gliding range. The controllers could only offer moral support and relay the situation to emergency services that might assist with rescue operations if the plane were forced to ditch in the sea, the pilots maintaining as much composure as possible under immense pressure, briefed the cabin crew on the impending emergency landing, instructing them to prepare the passengers and to secure the cabin according to established safety procedures. Initial evacuation plans were conveyed to the passengers by the cabin crew, who demonstrated how to don life vests, instructed everyone to remove high-heeled shoes, and advised on the brace position to adopt during impact, all while striving to project calmness and reassurance despite the evident fear and anxiety spreading among those on board. Rising tension was palpable as passengers grappled with the realization of the perilous situation, some offering prayers, others holding hands with loved ones, and many displaying signs of distress as they followed the crew's instructions. The clear weather and visibility conditions provided the pilots with the best possible scenario for attempting a water landing, but the inherent dangers of such a maneuver were well understood by the flight team, who concentrated intensely on guiding the powerless aircraft towards a controlled ditching. At approximately 12:45 in the afternoon, the critical moment arrived, when the aircraft, having descended to sea level, made contact with the surface of the Mediterranean Sea, with the pilots executing a ditching maneuver that aimed to minimize the impact forces and keep the fuselage intact as much as possible. The plane's belly skimmed the water initially, but without engine power to control speed and attitude. Precisely, the aircraft struck the waves more harshly than intended, causing significant structural damage upon impact. The force of the collision caused the fuselage to fracture, and water began flooding into the cabin, rapidly exacerbating the chaos and panic among passengers and crew who were jolted violently in their seats. Immediate impact injuries occurred as passengers were thrown against seats and overhead compartments, while some were struck by dislodged luggage and debris from the collapsing interior structures. Human reactions varied from stunned immobility to frantic attempts to escape, with the cabin crew urgently directing evacuation efforts, deploying life rafts where possible, and assisting those who were injured or trapped. The situation was dire as the aircraft began sinking, and the cold shock of the seawater added to the disorientation and distress experienced by survivors. Struggling to exit the plane, emergency response efforts were initiated almost immediately by nearby vessels, including fishing boats and recreational yachts, whose crews had witnessed the crash or noticed a sudden disturbance in the sea and moved swiftly towards the scene to offer assistance. The Italian Coast Guard, upon receiving alerts from air traffic control and distress, signals dispatched rescue helicopters and patrol boats, equipped with medical personnel and emergency supplies, to the crash site. Rescue teams faced challenges due to the scattered debris, oil slicks, and the risk of submerged wreckage. But they worked tirelessly to locate and retrieve survivors from the water, providing first aid and transporting them to hospitals in Sicily for further treatment. Immediate casualties numbered 16 out of the 13 individuals on board, with fatalities resulting from impact injuries, drowning, or hypothermia before rescue could be effected. The survivors, many of whom sustained serious injuries or were in a state of shock, received medical attention and psychological support to address the trauma of the incident. Families and friends awaited news with a mixture of hope and despair as authorities worked to identify victims and inform next of kin, bringing the full magnitude of the tragedy into stark reality. The extent of the damage was profound, with the aircraft completely destroyed and resting at the bottom of the sea, necessitating complex salvage operations to recover wreckage for investigative purposes and to mitigate environmental hazards such as fuel leaks and pollutants affecting marine ecosystems. The environmental impact included contamination of seawater and harm to marine life due to spilled aviation fuel and lubricants, prompting coordinated efforts by environmental agencies in cleanup crews to contain and remediate the affected areas. Casualty numbers were officially confirmed by authorities, listing 16 fatalities and 23 survivors, a toll that weighed heavily on the communities connected to the victims, both in Italy and Tunisia. The injured required extensive medical care for physical injuries ranging from fractures to burns, as well as ongoing psychological support to cope with the emotional aftermath of the disaster. Memorial services and vigils were held in honor of those who lost their lives, drawing together families, friends, and sympathetic citizens who shared in the collective grief and sought solace in communal expressions of mourning. Economic consequences for Tunenta Airlines were significant and multifaceted, encompassing legal liabilities from lawsuits filed by victims, families' substantial financial losses due to the destruction of the aircraft and subsequent decline in passenger confidence, and regulatory repercussions stemming from the investigation's findings. The aviation industry as a whole faced increased scrutiny regarding safety practices, maintenance protocols, and compliance with international standards, leading to a reevaluation of procedures and the implementation of more stringent oversight mechanisms. Community response was characterized by solidarity and compassion as support networks emerged to assist those affected by the tragedy, including fundraising efforts, counseling services, and advocacy for improved aviation safety measures. The disaster resonated deeply within both Italian and Tunisian societies, highlighting the interconnectedness of neighboring nations and the shared responsibility to ensure the well-being of all who traverse the skies above the Mediterranean. Official statements from aviation authorities and government officials conveyed condolences to the victims, families, and pledged thorough investigations to uncover the causes of the crash. The Italian National Agency for the Safety of Flight, ANSV, led the inquiry, collaborating with Tunisian counterparts and international experts to examine flight data, recorders, maintenance records, and operational procedures. The Investigation revealed that incorrect fuel gauges designed for a different model of aircraft had been installed on the ATR-72, leading to inaccurate fuel level readings and ultimately causing fuel starvation and engine failure. Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts. We will be landing in Sion shortly. The aviation industry has strengthened its commitment to safety, implementing rigorous protocols to ensure equipment. Installations are accurate for each aircraft model. Long-term effects of the tune-in to Flight 1153. Tragedy include better training for maintenance personnel and increased oversight by regulatory agencies. Lessons from this incident have influenced global policies emphasizing attention to detail and adherence to safety procedures. Memorials in Italy and Tunisia honor the victims, serving as reminders of the disaster's impact on families and communities. Future prevention measures focus on technological advancements like sophisticated fuel monitoring systems and fail-safes that alert pilots to discrepancies. A culture of safety empowers all personnel to identify and address risks proactively. The legacy of Tune-Enter Flight 1153 highlights the importance of precision and vigilance in aviation operations. By learning from past tragedies and striving for continuous improvement, the aviation community honors those who perished, aiming to prevent such disasters from occurring again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Shadow speaking. We've just landed safely in Sion. Thank you all for joining me on this journey through some of aviation's most impactful stories. Your support means the world to me. First, we reflected on Srivijaya Air Flight SJ182. On January 9th, 2021, this flight tragically crashed into the Java Sea shortly after departing from Jakarta. All 62 people on board lost their lives. The incident highlighted the critical importance of aircraft maintenance and adherence to safety protocols. Next, we examined Aeroflot Flight 821 on September 14, 2008. The aircraft crashed during its approach to landing in Perm, Russia. All 88 passengers and crew members perished. Investigations pointed to pilot error and inadequate training on the specific aircraft model as contributing factors. Finally, we discussed Tune-Enter Flight 1153 on August 6, 2005. Due to fuel exhaustion caused by incorrect fuel gauge installation, the plane made an emergency water landing in the Mediterranean Sea near Italy. 16 of the 39 people on board lost their lives. This tragedy underscored the vital importance of proper aircraft maintenance and equipment checks. These stories serve as solemn reminders of the paramount importance of safety training and vigilance in aviation. By learning from these events, the industry continues to improve, striving to prevent such tragedies from occurring again. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, stay safe and take care.